As mentioned in previous lesson, the sheer fact that the tourists are following the timeline of your narration gives an understanding that will prevent them from getting bored of so much information. It is actually advisable to check now and then if they have questions or they would like you to focus on a different topic. Be precise with dates, and whenever possible specify before Common Era or after Common Era. Again, Common Era or CE stands for after Christ. Now, we should see in detail the highlights of Rome. The Colosseum. It was built in CE 70 to year 80, almost 2,000 years ago. The Colosseum is an oval amphitheater in the center of the city of Rome, Italy. Amphitheater: think of a theater with a stage. Now put another theater opposite, where the stage is almost round, and the performers have public all around them. Well, that is an amphitheater. It is the largest ancient amphitheater ever built, and is still the largest still standing. Construction began under the Emperor Vespasian in year 70 Common Era and was completed in 80 Common Era under his successor and heir, Titus, and still modified under the other son Domitian. The Colosseum is built and can hold an estimated 50,000 spectators. It was used for gladiatorial fights, animal hunts, executions, reenactments of famous battles, and dramas based on Roman mythology. Although exposed to earthquakes and stone robbers, the Colosseum is still an iconic symbol of Imperial Rome. The name Colosseum is believed to be derived from a colossal statue of Nero on the model of the Colossus of Rhodes. The giant bronze sculpture of Nero as a solar deity, originally Helios, was moved to its position beside the amphitheater by the Emperor Hadrian. Quem Deus stat Colossus, stat et Roma, quando cadet Colossus, cadet et Roma, quando cadet Roma, cadet et mundus. From the Latin citation, as long as the Colossus stands, so shall Rome. When the Colossus falls, Rome shall fall. When Rome falls, so falls the world. It is often assumed that Jewish prisoners of war were brought back to Rome and contributed to the massive workforce needed for the construction of the amphitheater. Along with this free source of unskilled labor, teams of professional Roman builders, engineers, artists, painters and decorators undertook the more specialized tasks necessary for building the Colosseum. The Colosseum was constructed with several different materials: wood, limestone, tuff, tiles, cement, and mortar. The inaugural games were held in 81 Common Era. Over 9,000 wild animals were killed during the inaugural games of the Colosseum. Animal hunts continued until at least 523, when Anicius Maximus celebrated his consulship with some Venetians, criticized by King Theodoric the Great for their high cost. In 1749, Pope Benedict XIV endorsed the view that the Colosseum was a sacred site where early Christians had been martyred. Because of the ruined state of the interior, it is impractical to use the Colosseum to host large events. Only a few hundred spectators can be accommodated in temporary seating. However, much larger concerts have been held just outside, using the Colosseum as a backdrop. Performers who have played at the Colosseum in recent years have included Ray Charles, Paul McCartney, Elton John, and Billy Joel. The arcades are framed by half columns of the Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian orders, while the attic is decorated with Corinthian pilasters. Each of the arches in the second and third floor arcades frames statues, probably honoring divinities and other figures from classical mythology. 240 mast corbels were positioned around the top of the attic. They originally supported a retractable awning, known as the velarium, that kept the sun and rain off spectators. This consisted of a canvas-covered, net-like structure made of ropes, with a hole in the center. It covered 2/3 of the arena, and sloped down towards the center to catch the wind and provide a breeze for the audience. Sailors, specially enlisted from the Roman naval headquarters, were used to work the velarium. The Colosseum's huge crowd capacity made it essential that the venue could be filled or evacuated quickly. Its architects adopted solutions very similar to those used in modern stadiums to deal with the same problem. The amphitheater was ringed by 80 entrances at ground level, 76 of which were used by ordinary spectators. Each entrance and exit was numbered, as was each staircase. The northern main entrance was reserved for the Roman emperor and his aides, whilst the other three axial entrances were most likely used by the elite. All four axial entrances were richly decorated with painted stucco reliefs, of which fragments survive. Many of the original outer entrances have disappeared with the collapse of the perimeter wall, but entrances 23 to 54 survived. Spectators were given tickets in the form of numbered pottery piece, which directed them to the appropriate section and row. They accessed their seats via vomitoria, passageways that opened into a tier of seats from below or behind. These quickly dispersed people into their seats and, upon conclusion of the event or in an emergency evacuation, could permit their exit within only a few minutes. The name vomitoria derived from the Latin word for a rapid discharge, from which English derives the word vomit. They were seated in a tiered arrangement that reflected the rigidly stratified nature of Roman society. Special boxes were provided at the north and south ends respectively for the emperor and the Vestal Virgins, providing the best views of the arena. Flanking them at the same level was a broad platform or podium for the senatorial class, who were allowed to bring their own chairs. The names of some 5th-century senators can still be seen carved into the stonework, presumably reserving areas for their use. The tier above the senators, known as the Menianum Primum, was occupied by the non-senatorial noble class or knights. The next level up, the Menianum Secundum, was originally reserved for ordinary Roman citizens and was divided into two sections. The lower part was for wealthy citizens, while the upper part was for poor citizens. Specific sectors were provided for other social groups, for instance, boys with their tutors, soldiers on leave, foreign dignitaries, scribes, heralds, priests and so on. Stone, and later marble, seating was provided for the citizens and nobles, who presumably would have brought their own cushions with them. Inscriptions identified the areas reserved for specific groups. Another level was added at the very top of the building during the reign of Domitian. This comprised a gallery for the common poor, slaves and women. It would have been either standing room only, or would have had very steep wooden benches. Some groups were banned altogether from the Colosseum. Latin inscription in the Colosseum. The arena itself was 83 meters by 48 meters. It comprised a wooden floor covered by sand, the Latin word for sand arena. The hypogeum, literally meaning underground. The hypogeum was not part of the original construction but was ordered to be built by Emperor Domitian. Little now remains of the original arena floor, but the hypogeum is still clearly visible. It consisted of a two-level subterranean network of tunnels and cages beneath the arena where gladiators and animals were held before contests began. 80 vertical shafts provided instant access to the arena for caged animals and scenery pieces concealed underneath. Larger hinged platforms provided access for elephants and similar beasts. The hypogeum was connected by tunnels to a number of points outside the Colosseum. Animals and performers were brought through the tunnel from nearby stables, with the gladiators' barracks at the Ludus Magnus to the east also being connected by tunnels. Separate tunnels were provided for the emperor and the Vestal Virgins to permit them to enter and exit the Colosseum without needing to pass through the crowds. Substantial quantities of machinery also existed in the hypogeum. Elevators and pulleys raised and lowered scenery and props, as well as lifting caged animals to the surface for release. There is evidence for the existence of major hydraulic mechanisms, and according to ancient accounts, it was possible to flood the arena rapidly, presumably via a connection to a nearby aqueduct. However, the construction of the hypogeum at Domitian's request put an end to the practice of flooding, and thus also to naval battles, early in the Colosseum's existence. Ave Caesar morituri te salutant, Hail, Caesar, those who will die salute you. This would be the salute of the gladiators, shouted to the emperor before fighting. The Colosseum, besides gladiatorial shows, hosted a variety of other events. Another popular type of show was the animal hunt, or venizio. This utilized a great variety of wild beasts, mainly imported from Africa and the Middle East, and included creatures such as rhinoceros, hippopotamuses, elephants, giraffes, Barbary lions, panthers, leopards, bears, Caspian tigers, crocodiles and ostriches. Battles and hunts were often staged amid elaborate sets with movable trees and buildings. Such events were occasionally on a huge scale. Trajan is said to have celebrated his victories in Dacia in 107 with contests involving 11,000 animals and 10,000 gladiators over the course of 123 days. During lunch intervals, executions ad bestias would be staged. Those condemned to death would be sent into the arena, naked and unarmed, to face the beasts of death which would literally tear them to pieces. Other performances would also take place by acrobats and magicians, typically during the intervals. Silva or recreations of natural scenes were also held in the arena. Painters, technicians and architects would construct a simulation of a forest with real trees and bushes planted in the arena's floor, and animals would then be introduced. Such scenes might be used simply to display a natural environment for the urban population, or could otherwise be used as the backdrop for hunts or dramas depicting episodes from mythology. They were also occasionally used for executions in which the hero of the story, played by a condemned person, was killed in one of various gruesome but mythologically authentic ways, such as being mauled by beasts or burned to death. The Colosseum is also the site of Roman Catholic ceremonies in the 20th and 21st centuries. For instance, Pope Benedict XVI led the Stations of the Cross called the Via Sacra. Cross dedicated to the Christian martyrs, placed in 2000 by Pope John Paul II.